note, I see it is the top of the hour here. So it's possible, Michael, that some additional members from the public audience might join us by the time I'm done with this sentence or, a few minutes into your presentation. If they do join us, we'll allow some time for questions from that group. If nobody joins us, we'll just get right into our conversation as well. But again, first of all, congratulations on making it to this point. Certainly a big milestone for you, many years in the making. But the purpose of this meeting is really just for you to demonstrate to the committee that you've done the work of sufficient quality to receive the doctoral degree, and then hopefully being able to just speak to it openly in a forum like this. But congratulations on making it to the stage once again. Again, no members in the audience yet, so I won't give them any ground rules, but we'll give them a chance to speak if anybody does show up. We have actually 6 defenses this week, I believe. We just added one more, so our public audience might be split between those. But on any note, once we get into our dialogue at the end, after you've presented, we will get into our conversation. But anyway, congrats again. And to the committee members, Dr. Lamott, Dr. Nippert, thanks for your support here for Michael's journey along the way. Excited to see what you have to say to us today. So, Michael, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Dr. Bunce, for those words and for helping me through this, and the rest of the committee for helping me through this process and getting to this point. So today I'm going to talk about my study on the impact of music preference on perceived training performance for Division I NCAA female softball athletes, as well as strength coaches. So background information on this topic. Music is widely used in sport. We use it in practice. We use it in weight rooms. It's used in rehab settings in the athletic training room. It's used in some sports psychology domains. It's used everywhere in sport. It's also known that music impacts our bodies in various ways. There's evidence of music influencing heart rate, breathing rate. There's evidence of music affecting our psychology. There our mood, our emotion regulation. There's also evidence of neurochemistry with different hormone responses in response to music, as well as brain scans looking at our psychology to see different regions of our brains responding to different types of music, whether we like music, not like music, volume, tempo. Different parameters have been shown to respond during brain scans. So what we're looking at with music is basically the arousal response, the emotion regulation. We're looking at attention, focus, mood, everything that comes into play when we talk about athletic performance. And all of these factors can influence performance as well as perceived exertion in different ways. So the reason I looked at resistance training specifically is I am a strength and conditioning coach. I've spent most of my time with, football, basketball, baseball. I've done track and field, but mostly focused on sprinters and throwers. I have not really been on the endurance side. I'm not a large human, but I'm not a running build by any means. So I've just never been in that world. So a lot of the research when I look into music came up with endurance trained athletes in endurance settings. So looking at how music can help runners or cyclists prolong their distance, prolong their endurance, stave off time to fatigue, stave off feelings of discomfort through dissociation. So a lot of the research in music on performance focused on endurance athletes and activities. There was very limited research that looked at resistance training specifically with music. One specific study was Ballman et al., where they did a rep max test with preferred and non-preferred music, finding that the preferred music yielded higher power output, more reps, and peak velocity as well in the barbell. So volume and tempo were not considered during that test. It was just whatever the athlete was comfortable with, but they looked at preferred versus not preferred music during a bench press. And that's one of the only studies that I've been able to find and scouring everything I can look at that looked at resistance training with music. So additionally, there's limited research in coach and athlete perspectives on music. I think intuitively, most athletes I talk to, most coaches, they have their max song, they have their hype song, they have all these songs, but there's nothing that actually looks into if that's just in your head or if that's actually there's a benefit to having that. So, what this research sought to explore was to what extent does music influence performance and perception of effort, as reported as both the athletes and the coaches. So, basically, looking at does the presence of music, and this was generalized to start with, where we narrowed it in as we assess this, but does the presence of music actually reduce the perception of effort during the session? And then through that, are we able to improve performance through potentially increasing the intensity of the session by introducing music to reduce the perception of effort? So, what the significance of this study is going to provide evidence-based insight into how music can be a low-cost, non-invasive strategy to improve performance. We're not talking about performance-enhancing drugs or caffeine or any of the stimulant stuff like that. How we can use music to potentially elicit those effects. So our participants for this study included 23 Division I female softball players, where 18 of them actually participated in the survey. Their ages ranged from 18 to 25, and the criteria for participation meant that they had to actively be on the softball team. They had to actively be on the roster. So that meant they were enrolled in classes, they were enrolled in the university, but that we didn't accept student managers, stuff like that. It was active softball players. And our strength and conditioning was 10 strength and conditioning coaches that were actively coaching strength and conditioning for the university, not specifically for softball, but just the strength and conditioning staff at the university, with ages ranging from 25 to 50. And this excluded graduate assistants and interns, just because they have not developed coaching yet. So they're not going to have the philosophies and strategies and implementation of music that seasoned coaches are going to have. So our instrumentation for this involved surveys that were distributed through Google Forms and collected through Google Sheets. The athletes had one survey and the coaches had different survey. Both of them including Likert scale questions for quantitative values, as well as qualitative open-ended questions to try to find trends in the quantitative data. So 1 through 5, 1 through 10 questions, depending on which the question was, and then basically explain your answer questions to try to put try to analyze the feelings in a quantitative way so we can get data on that, and then allow them room to explain those feelings and explain their reasoning to see if we can find trends in that data between the athletes and the coaches as well. So how this worked out is I was actively with the university, and following with coaching permission, with the sport coach permission, following one of their lifting sessions, I was allowed time to come in, talk to them, introduce myself. I read them the informed consent that was on the initial block of the survey. And then I provided a QR code for them to scan with their phones, which then additionally prompted them their informed consent. And then them participating in the survey implied consent as worded in the informed consent block. But I also gave them 3 opportunities to opt out of the survey. The first being the first informed consent. The second being if they decided not to scan the QR code, then they just didn't participate. And then the third option was when they read the informed consent the third time, if they decided to back out of the survey, then they did not consent to the survey. So the coaches, I did a similar methodology here where I presented to them what the study was aiming for. So basically my prospectus. And then from there, I provided them with a link to the survey and a QR code as well. And then they were allowed to do the survey on their time after I'd already given them informed consent and expressed what the survey is trying to achieve, just due to scheduling constraints with the coaching. So all the surveys were collected in Google Forms and then exported over to Google Sheets. And then we use the JASP data software to analyze and present the data. So our design and analysis employed a mixed methods cross-sectional comparative survey. We're using the quantitative Likert scales, and this was to again try to transpose the feelings into a numeric value, assessing 4 trends. So on a scale of 1 to 5, do you feel music influences your performance? And then following that was our qualitative open-ended, which was why did you answer what you answered? So They answered 5 out of 5. Why did you answer this? Because it helps energize me. It helps hype me up. So this allowed for me to get the numerical data and then also associate that and see why the relationships may exist also between the athletes and coaches. So our dependent variables we were looking at were the perceived effort and perceived performance, and using independent variables of music presence. So whether music was present or not, what their preference of music was. So if they preferred music, and then type of music, as well as music volume and music tempo. So our ethical considerations, this was voluntary. I gave them 3 opportunities to opt out. So they were not required to do this survey. They received no compensation. They also, their coaches did not punish them if they didn't do it, nothing like that. Additionally, no personally identifiable information was collected. So I did not collect names, phone numbers, anything that may identify the response to the athlete. Nevertheless, in case anything does happen, this data will be stored on my Google Sheets with the school account, which is password protected. And because it was a survey, participation in this survey involved no risk to the participant. So what we found was that music was highly ranked between both athletes and coaches for improving or reducing our perceived effort and improving our perceived performance. Music preference and music volume were the highest correlated with the positive association, finding that ultimately music the athletes like at a volume that they like is the highest rated effect you can get from this study. So we had strong associations with the preference of music decreasing the perception of effort and improving our performance, with volume also related to decreasing the perception of effort and increasing performance. But it did fail to predict performance once that preference was considered. So basically, volume was not, if we isolated preference, volume did not play a role. Volume and tempo didn't really, tempo was not significant at all. Volume was only present when preference was there. So what I mean by that is if the athlete did not like the music, no matter how quiet or loud, it would have influenced their performance. Versus if they do like the music, we're going to have a better performance and a lower perceived effort, regardless of the volume again. So the implication from these findings is that individualized athlete preferred music is what the key mechanism is. Volume and tempo by themselves do not provide additional value if the athlete does not like the music, essentially. So our practical applications are, again, this is a low cost, low risk way to improve performance. And getting into our further research here, this is where we can capitalize on hype and flow state. So providing music the athletes like at a volume they like may create more hype, more energy, athletes, having a good time dancing, getting excited for each other based on music they like versus playing music that they don't like. Additionally, on the psychology side, if we're thinking, again, this is focused on strength and conditioning, but if we're focusing on athletic performance for sport, we can look at our flow state as well, with a lot of research indicating flow state and some of the responses coming back indicating that music does help them get into a flow state for their sport. So this study did not specifically look at sport. It looked at strength and conditioning, but a lot of the responses did trend towards using music to get in the zone for their sport. So our applications as well for the coaches is to allow athletes to create playlists. I'm saying weight room playlist because that's what this study specifically focused on. But there's other research by Yeats that did look at allowing volleyball players, high school volleyball players, to create a pregame playlist that they created. And they found that that yielded better performance during the game. It also created better team cohesion, team bonding. It brought the volleyball girls together, created rituals around the act of just creating that playlist for them. So it did help overall improve the general performance of the team, not just athletically, but socially, cohesion wise as well. So what this contributes to are the current knowledge and our field. This adds to the limited research of music applied to resistance training. As I mentioned, Ballman was one of the only studies I could find that even looked at music in resistance training, not endurance training. But this also evaluates both the coach and the athlete perceptions of music with their performance, which has not been studied in any of the research that I'm able to find is looking at perceptions specifically from the coach. They've all looked at athlete perceptions and kind of indirectly athlete perceptions. This also helps provide evidence for music as a low cost, low risk performance enhancer, also in environments where music may be restricted. This is where if I've worked with coaches in the past that use music as a punishment reward system where you have to earn your music or you lose music if you don't do something right. And this is providing context that says maybe we should look at it as a performance enhancer rather than a reward punishment system. So impacts on professional practice, this is going to increase athlete buy-in first and foremost. This is going to allow athletes to create their own playlist, create their own songs they like. And what that's going to do is give them ownership into the process, into the weight room. I know in strength and conditioning, we always talk about the athletes are not there. So I know, let's take cross country. The athletes are not there to lift weights. They're there to run cross country. The weight room is a byproduct that helps them run cross country better. So understanding that, giving the athletes facilitation and buy-in is going to help improve that long-term resistance training we're trying to achieve in the weight room with those athletes that may not be as excited about being in the weight room. Additionally, when we talk about using music as performance and reducing perceived exertion, we can use this for our session and programming management. So what I mean by that is a lot of the coaching response on how they like to use music in their coaching strategy revolved around using it to kind of transition the workout through the whole session. So we would start with kind of lower volume, exciting-ish music to be able to instruct and get the warm-up going, but still get that heart rate up, get them excited about the session. Then once we get into a main strength or power block, we're able to turn that music up loud. Again, this should be an athlete-created playlist, so it's music that they theoretically like, and we're turning that volume up to get them excited, get them hyped up, and then allow them that music during the strength and power blocks. And then if we're doing a conditioning circuit at the end, we can keep it loud, keep it exciting. If we're not, if we're just doing some foam rolling, cooling down, we can undulate that music back down, bring it down to a quieter volume, maybe bring on a change of pace, maybe some more relaxing music to start bringing that body into that parasympathetic state instead of keeping them all sympathetic and sending them off. So that's how we can use that. But then additionally, the other aim of this study was to, if we can reduce perceived effort and improve performance, then we should be able to run higher intensity sessions, which we can plan for that in our programming of our sessions in general. We are programming our workouts for the team. Additionally, there's a rehabilitation and sports psychology connection with a lot of research speaking to the dissociative response of music, where now if we're doing a rehab setting, let's say we're recovering from a knee injury and we're doing some banded terminal knee extensions or maybe some step ups, we can use music to dissociate the pain from the knee injury that they may be experiencing, or use it as a tempo, thinking like a step up kind of test. We can use it for a tempo to kind of regulate their pace with the rehab process. And then the sports psychology connection, making sure that they're able to get into their flow state, get into the zone, and understand how to use that appropriately for game or practice settings. The limitations of this study, these were self-reported survey responses. So they are subject to over assumption, under assumption of their effort, of the music's effort, the music's role on their performance. There's a lack of objective measures to validate their feelings. So basically, if they say their performance is better, there was no physical testing of barbell velocity, weight, anything like that. It was just a survey response, which would be a further research topic. Our population was a small sample size. We had 18 athletes and 10 coaches that were restricted to single gender. So they were all female. They were single sport. They were all softball. They were in the off season and they were Division I. So there could be potential differences with male athletes in a different sport in season versus off season, and maybe division, NAIA, different divisions like that. And then again, practical limitations are policies around music in athletic environments. There's a lot of rules, regulations around music, and there's also not a practical time to use music. Some weight rooms are around offices and classrooms that just cranking up loud, rap music or rock music is just not practical for the environment it's in. So that is also a limitation of the results of this study. So recommendations for further research is controlling for physiological factors. When we talk about performance in the weight room specifically, there are a lot of factors that go into that performance. So controlling for sleep, hydration, their nutrition, any stimulant use, right? So if they're taking pre-workout and they're like, wow, my lift felt great this lift, it's like, yeah, because you took a bunch of pre-workout, so it's not the music, as well as their recovery and then the amount of stress that they're under. Additionally, further research, we should be using external objective measurement devices such as percentage of their maxes or finding new maxes with music and without music, velocity-based training devices, so force output, power output, different devices like that, as well as some kind of isokinetic or isometric force plate data where maybe we do a rack pull, isometric rack pull with force plate data with and without music and see if the power output is a little bit different between those. Again, we should be looking at trials isolating each variable. So this was an all-inclusive, what do you feel about this? But if we run trials isolating the same music, just changing the tempo, changing the volume, undulating the rhythm of the song, different genres of music, see if there's a point of diminishing returns with this as well. So basically, is there a point where the volume is too loud? Or is there a point where you get sick of that same song and now it doesn't affect you anymore? And then finally, as I mentioned at the beginning, the psychological or social arousal determination. We need to determine if the music is what's affecting the athlete or it's the social environment that the music's creating that affects the athlete. So what I mean by that is if a football team has their favorite hype song on, everybody's dancing, everybody's yelling, everybody's having a great time, is that what's affecting the athlete or is it the actual music itself that the athlete's hearing? So, in conclusion, music preference significantly influenced perceived effort and performance in resistance training. Volume did play a small role, but the preference of the music was the main determinant. Athlete preferred music is what's going to reduce the exertion and enhance motivation and performance as well. The coaches and the athletes both perceived music as impactful for those metrics. So both coaches and athletes reported that their music or the presence of music and preference of music both reduced exertion and seemed to yield performance improvements. And these findings support practical low-cost applications in strength and conditioning and contributes to under-researched area by incorporating coach and athlete perspectives. Overall, this research underscores the importance of considering psychological and emotional readiness in conjunction with physical programming in high-performance settings. Thank you.
All right, wonderful. Yeah, thank you for that professional delivery, Michael. And if you take out the 3 minutes that I talked at the beginning, we're probably right at 20 minutes for that. So solid timing.
Well, thank you.
Unless I'm missing something, it looks like it's just the four of us. So at this point, you can leave your presentation open. We might need to refer to something there during the conversation. But I'll turn it over to Dr. Lamott and Dr. Nippert for any questions or comments.
So just refreshing my memory on the methodology, as the athletes were taking the survey, they actually weren't performing any activities. It was a reflective perception on that. Is that accurate? So in terms of the connection to the decreased effort perception, that wasn't associated with any actual effort. It was a perception.
Any physical effort, correct?
Right. Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah.
So the surveys were distributed immediately after a resistance training session. As in, do you feel music reduce the perception of effort? Do you feel music helped improve your performance during the session?
And you didn't manipulate the music during the session because it was a single time event, right? I'm just remembering the methodology here.
Okay. Correct. I was very limited in what I was allowed to do with the university.
Yeah. So let me just ask that question. So then, having gone through this, and what would you do differently given the same constraints, or would you do anything differently in the study, having gone through the experience now that you would do if you were doing this again for the first time? Or what would be that recommendation if you had any for yourself 18 months ago?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would, first off, I had a lot of verbal promises that all of this was good to go. And then when it came time to put signatures on paper, a lot of things got funky. So
Mhm.
looking back, reflecting on this, I would definitely approach that differently. I didn't realize how universities get with external universities coming into another university trying to do research. So I didn't realize that.
A
I
lot
don't
of
know if that's
testosterone. There's a
yeah,
lot of
it's strength and
testosterone in the room
conditioning,
with some of that stuff.
kinesiology. Right. So I kind of ran into that issue. Luckily, my I have contacts in the softball team and they understand, they're sympathetic to what I'm doing, and they were curious themselves. So that's why I had the permissions I had. But as far as physical testing and manipulating variables, I wasn't allowed to. But to answer your
Hmm.
question a little more thoroughly, if I magic wand had all the freedom in the world, I would have used this as a preliminary kind of survey and then do a follow-up session where, yes, so if they're lifting, let's say 2 times a week, one of those sessions is going to be no music with the same workout. The next session is going to be add the music in, and then survey them each time just to kind of see if I can find a difference between, hey, this session had no music. How did you feel with that? And then have some kind of external, we have gym awares there. So add the gym aware unit to measure force output with the same weight, and then see the actual production that they produce with and without music. And I would run
Right.
that back to back and then potentially a post survey. Okay, we did one without, we did one with. Now let's try this again. And you tell me how you feel about this, to try to
Right.
take away that nuance or that vagueness where I mentioned in the limitations, where they could be overestimating the ability of music to improve their performance. They could be underestimating their overall performance. They could be overestimating their ability of effort, underestimating. So try to eliminate as many of those variables as possible.
Yeah. Yeah. I get that perceived effort piece. Yeah, for sure. So you get the physical, psychological together simultaneously. It's good though that
Correct.
just even that perception side, because you're also dealing with a Division 1 athlete that's got experience, right? And so it's not like they're new to the game and they've developed themselves to their intuition on that impact is significant and legitimate from the survey. Yeah. Well, thanks.
Yeah, of course.
Michael, I'm gonna piggyback off of what you said a minute ago, but with the coaches, and the restrictions that you had. I don't know if it was with the coaches or with the university, staff in general, but given the information that like the results that you've obtained from your study, have you presented this back to them to show them kind of what you found? And if you have they changed their mind about maybe giving you more access?
So, okay. So, I'm chuckling because the results of this study, I'm still with the university unofficial capacity. We are working on bringing me on as an official capacity, but it's we're working on that. So I'm still there is what I'm getting at. So the football team, the head strength coach for the football team is in charge of the strength and conditioning department. And when I was there the other day, they were like, he's like, cut the music. You guys are, a lot of explicitives, but he basically said, cut the music. You guys are lifting like crap, but you don't get music until you come back. And I'm just like, hey man, that's what my research is on. He's like, oh yeah, I forgot you were doing that. What'd you find out? And I'm like, maybe let them have music and see what happens. And I mean, I had to go do other duties, but he let them have music back. So I don't know how that affected, but I did tell him, I'm like, you don't want to do that as reward punishment. You want to use that as a performance enhancer. And I mean, I haven't been able to present all of this to them in that capacity, but it was funny because that came up last week about that. And I just kind of threw that at him like, hey man, this is what I'm literally studying. So maybe, listen to me here. But,
Yeah.
um, and then you had I'm sorry, your second part of your question?
I was just curious if they'd be more willing to let you
Once,
kind of
oh,
do
sorry.
a control intervention study, knowing the results that you've gotten so far.
Once I am brought on staff, they have told me they will allow me as much flexibility as I'm allowed to. The
Okay.
problem is I was an intern technically on paper with the university, and then I was through this study, I was dissociating myself as the intern there, coming in as Michael Richards with Concordia St. Paul trying to do research. And I think it got muddied with the rules because the internship rules were I wasn't allowed to do anything like that in the intern capacity. So I
Mm,
think it just got muddy with the university's terminology of things. And the kinesiology department of the university wasn't even involved. It was all the strength and conditioning department.
okay.
So I just going back to Dr. Lamont's question, I think now that I know how the processes kind of work and who to talk to, I think I would have been able to get that a little clearer, but it was a lot of, yeah, that sounds good. And then when it comes pen to paper, nobody wanted to sign that because that wasn't their domain, air quotes.
Yeah. Yeah. That's too bad. I'm sorry to hear that it was a little bit of a struggle.
Well, we got it sorted out as best as possible. So,
Yeah.
which is better. I mean, I don't know if we remember back my initial when I was in North Carolina and I proposed this. The methodology was going to be email it out to athletic directors and hope I get responses. So the
Yeah.
fact that I was able to dial in a specific team with a specific population, I think made this a little bit stronger of a study versus I have a whole hodgepodge of, random responses back. Let's see what I can do with it. So,
Right. Yeah. No, I think it was a really good first step. And now that you're going to be on staff there, I bet you could do this and
and
do
I've had a,
yes.
a lot of the softball girls actually come back and ask me, like, are we actually doing something or what's going on here? And I'm like, well, officially I'm not on staff here, so I can't technically research you guys, like
Yeah.
hence the multiple opportunities to opt out of the study, unofficial capacity, all that. But they are trying to bring me on staff on the strength staff, and then
Okay.
from there they told me, they don't know anything about research. They're all, they're not doing this. They're like,
Yeah.
whatever you got to do as long as it's legal and doesn't get us in trouble, like, sweet. So
That's good. Insider trading.
yeah, exactly.
Dr. Lamont likes that. I know he talks with lawyers a lot.
I
I
just want to
do.
stay in compliance. I know I don't want to interrupt compliance because that gets a lot of people in trouble. So,
Yeah,
I,
yeah.
yeah, I think you're going to be good. I don't think you have to worry about this at all.
right.
So, Michael, I have just one more question. You didn't survey sport coach. You didn't survey the softball coach, right?
Correct.
Okay. I was curious because in your problem statement, way back on page 6, you include the sport coach. So that threw me for a minute.
Okay. So,
And
okay.
in the definitions.
So the definitions, I remember putting that in there because we did, in my prospectus, it was getting confusing of what I was referring to.
Yeah.
So I did put the sport coach in there as a definition of sport coach, and then the strength and conditioning coach is that.
Yeah, it's in your problem statement. It's like the second sentence. It says the second will evaluate the perception of
Strength and
output
conditioning
from the
sport, yeah.
athletes according to the coaches, and then in parentheses, strength and conditioning and sport. So it's no problem that you didn't. I was just a little confused.
No, absolutely. And I think the more we discuss this, it made more sense to dial in on one domain. I
Yeah,
think might be what happened, and then I just overlooked
yeah,
that edit.
yeah. No
Um,
worries. I just wanted
but
to
that's
make sure I didn't miss something.
no, that's great because I did have, like I said, I had very big ambitions for this, and then they got very narrowed in. So
Yeah,
I think at one point I did want to evaluate these sport coaches on their perception of music during practice as well.
yeah,
But then we kind of steered it more towards let's just focus on one domain at a time here.
yeah. You'll just maybe want to go back and revisit that first chapter.
On that note, Michael, I took a
Not a
note
problem.
of that comment as well. I forgot to mention I'll be your official note taker here. Not that I
Okay.
don't encourage you to do the same as new ideas are generated.
Yeah, I have my notepad taking notes as we go. So
Were you
Yeah,
surprised by the weak association between tempo and performance perception, at least based on what you found in your literature review with the existing literature?
I wasn't necessarily surprised for resistance training. So in my limited time running, I remember hearing somewhere that if you set tempos that you're going to try to match that pace and your heart rate could potentially match that. So I would always try that with running. But I never really saw an application of that to resistance training. So 'cause we're not really any tempos are more counted out. So like I would count out 3 or 4 seconds, but you wouldn't match tempo to music for resistance training necessarily. Conditioning sessions, maybe. But running and endurance, cycling, stuff like that, endurance activities, I definitely understand the correlation with tempo. I wasn't necessarily surprised at the tempo not correlating to performance with resistance training. It's just not a metric we really think about, I guess, in strength and conditioning. It's mostly type of music and volume, which seems to ring true. So
Yeah, that's understandable. You're saying you might strike a running cadence to the certain flow of music, but you're not necessarily squatting to the beat of the rap song
correct.
you have
And
on.
correct. And there's been I know that Sally Up, Sally Down song. There are people that try to do like squats and burpees and push-ups to that. And I'm not gonna speak on the strength and conditioning relevance of that, but I know it's been tried in the past. And I mean, in the military setting, we do cadence activities, but again, that none of this would be applied with music. So I wouldn't select music with higher or lower tempo for an activity in resistance training as I would with running or cycling.
I thought it was interesting that, even though the athlete and coach analysis didn't show significance, that the athletes did have a higher perception, even though it wasn't statistically significant in terms of the perceived value. Any reflection on why the coaches would be lower than the athletes?
I think it's because, so if it's coming from me as a strength coach, I am watching them and I'm telling them this is how the rep looks to me. So let's say a squat. If I am performing a squat as an athlete and I'm like, this feels like an 8 out of 10, let's say. And then I
Mhm.
turn around and my coach says, no, that looks good. Put more weight on. That's about a 6 out of 10. The coach is watching the biomechanical patterns. We're watching the speed of the bar. We're watching the
Right.
technique and the form. The athlete is feeling that weight. So I think the
The effort.
athlete may be indicating that maybe it's that dissociative effect that we saw in the research, where if the athlete's able to listen to the music and not focus on how heavy that weight is, or maybe it's their max out song, or it's a song that like really energizes them and hypes them up, it's going to make that feel better, where the coach is still staying objective and just watching the athlete from that external point of view.
Sure.
That's
Sure.
my from
Yeah.
being a strength and conditioning coach for a decade. That's kind of where I would come from with that.
Yeah. Well, it goes back to your observation too of the football coach that, or whichever strength coach was calling him off from music, but the perceived value of it. Yeah.
Correct.
No,
And
I
that's kind of
just
what
observation.
initially, when we had to decide our topic, when it came around to settling on this topic, it was specifically because I've worked with a lot of military. I've worked for the military with the Air Force and the Army for the past 4 years, and before that was strength and conditioning in college, high school, etc. And I've worked with a lot of, I don't want to say old school coaches, but a lot of coaches with that perception of music as a reward or a punishment. And I mean, I lift myself, I train athletes, and I've always intuitively known that when I have music I like and I have certain playlists and certain songs for certain things, that I perform better with that. Now, again, with the further research, we need to decide whether that is psychological, like I'm just telling myself that because this song's on, I'm gonna lift better, or if that's actually an effect of the song. And it seems to be an effect from the music itself, based on all the research on the physiology, psychology, and the neurochemistry that has been observed with music.
Yeah. I mean, it just strikes I was thinking kind of an associated or parallel, I'll say here, and then I'll shut up, is, riding on Peloton, there's a lot of intentional effort by the leader or the director to make sure that the music has some sort of flow with the different effort levels associated during that bout. And just a thought. It'd be interesting to another study potentially through that sector on even on the endurance, but it all really gets at that effort mitigation side of the house, whether it's in a high power state or not. And of course, in cycling, you can get into that at certain levels where you're really pushing a pretty hard pedal. So sidebar, but I was just thinking about that parallel concept there in a different athletic training environment. Nice work. No, I don't have any more questions.
Well, thank you. And I just to piggyback on that, that's where a lot of the research is has been conducted is cycling power output, cycling time to fatigue, cycling as well as treadmill, but specifically on the
Yeah.
cycling, time to fatigue, power output, all those kind of measurements have been what's researched. So applying that to
Right.
resistance training is where the evidence was lacking.
Yep. Good.
Maybe just to wrap a bow on this, then let's say I'm the head strength and conditioning coach at your institution, and can you remind us of the name of the school that you're at in San Antonio?
UTSA, so University of Texas, San Antonio.
Yeah. So I'm the strength coach. And I'm gonna ask you again, kind of, what can I apply immediately from your study to help our athletes? What would kind of that quick 30-second elevator speech look like? How could we use your study to help our athletes? What would you say?
Yeah, well, luckily we're in summer right now, so football camp is going to be starting up. I say that because he's the head football coach as well, their head football strength coach as well. So my recommendation would be right now we're at a perfect time where they can all come together. They're all doing team bonding and meetings and everything already. Have them come together, make a playlist for the weight room. It's up to the university how clean they want that playlist. I've heard very vulgar music. I've heard very clean music. It's up to them, but allow the athletes to make a playlist, turn that volume up when it's time to lift, and let's get crazy with it. If that answers your question, that's
Sure,
so
yeah,
basically letting the athletes make the playlist, because that seems to be where the data is showing is if the athletes like the music, then they're going to perform better with volume considered, but not necessarily volume playing that much of a role. But if we can have an athlete create a playlist, which they can do right now in because it's summertime, get that playlist created, turn the volume up, and let's lift some weights. They should see a reduced perception of effort as well as a higher performance from the intensity of the session.
Or at least perceived performance.
Correct. And then and because football right now, they're using the gym awares, they're using, I mean, we would just doing that alone, I would be able to collect data to somewhat indirectly see if that's working or not. It would not be directly, hey, music is doing this, but it would be create a playlist, turn the music up, and then based on the gym aware force velocity unit and then the numbers on the bar versus what they're expected to be, I could indirectly see if that music is making a difference or not.
Then my final question is maybe stepping back a little bit, and I want you to be brutally honest with this, but if you were to, tell us how you feel like you're already an expert when you entered the program, you had a master's degree, you had a lot of experience, but how would you say your level of expertise might have changed from the time that you entered the program or started this project until today? Has there been any transformation there? And if not, that's okay. You can be honest.
What are you referencing by level of expertise?
I mean, just in general, are there certain areas of interest to you that have been, I guess, transformed from start to end of the project?
I know not a knock on the master's program. That's not what I'm saying at all. The master's program I seem to do very well with and kind of fly through without a lot of hiccups, right? So writing the master's thesis and going through that process was very snag free. And then coming into the doctorate program, which I should be a higher level of scrutiny. I mean, the failing the prospectus the first time ultimately due to me, but other circumstances as well. It opened my eyes that writing is not just going to be, throw it on paper, do some research, read some articles, throw it on paper and go. There's a significantly more level of depth to actually doing research instead of just kind of theorizing about, well, I read this article, let me theorize what this is going to do. Actually conducting a study, trying to account for all the variables, limitations, thinking of limitations that I wouldn't have even thought of until it was mentioned to me. refining, I want to assess music on performance. Okay, but what does that mean? And like really peeling back to get a true problem statement, hypothesis, like really thinking deep into what I'm trying to accomplish. And that's kind of expanded out into other avenues as well. So I guess to wrap up my answer is just that deeper level of thinking. I've gone from intuitive, like, yeah, this makes sense to me. Let me, do a quick research on that and see what the research says, to like, no, let me actually peel this back, think about this, validate this through research or find out what the research says. And then actually put good thoughts to paper, good thoughts to the project. So that's applied to strength and conditioning. I've noticed that I'm a little more thoughtful with my programming. I'm a little more thoughtful with the tools I'm using, not just any shiny object that's thrown at me. I'm a little more, well, let me look into the validity and reliability of that tool you're giving me. Why are we using force plates instead of jump mat, instead of vertical jump, the Vertec machine? Like, why are we using what we're using now? Just being a little more intentional with everything, I guess. If that makes sense, if that answers your question.
Yeah, I think so. Maybe I'm hearing maybe a little bit more intellectual curiosity, a little more emphasis
Yeah.
on evidence-based practice, and just higher level of deeper thinking in general, you're saying.
Yeah, I think I've always been curious. Like I've gotten it. I mean, I started as a paramedic for about 5 years before I switched into exercise science. I switched into exercise science because one, I didn't know that was a field. So I went paramedic route and then nursing route, and I was going to do all that. But I've always followed the bro science as younger, and I never understood the disconnect of like bro science versus what respected people are saying on podcasts or YouTube or whatever. So then I started getting curious, and then obviously once you go down that rabbit hole, it's a very deep rabbit hole. So I think it's been a little more intentional with that curiosity now. It's I understand how to scratch that curiosity rather than just random, you know, oh, I'm thinking about this week. Let me dive into that. It's like, no, I can actually intentionally research what I'm curious about now.
Yeah, appreciate those thoughts.
Michael, what's one way that you might be able to share your results of your study to your broader community of strength and conditioning coaches?
Well, I have a weightlifting podcast that's interested in my results. They actually interviewed me after my prospectus to talk about what the study was going to be, and then they're waiting for me to finish this process to talk about what the results actually are. But they're more focused on the sport of weightlifting specifically and how music influences that. Unfortunately, music is not allowed during competition. It, technically it's not, but I've been to a lot of meets where they're starting to let music play in the competition, which may be another avenue where I can present this and see what they say. They may say no because it does enhance performance, and that's kind of a not fair advantage. But um, as I mean, I try to do weekly LinkedIn article reviews. Like, you go on LinkedIn, you post the article instead of just a post. It's like an article. I try to do those when I'm able to. I have a new job, so time's been limited, but I want to be. I say this humbly, and I always get laughed at when I say this. I do want to contribute to strength and conditioning. I try to put my athletes first, and I want my what's best for my athletes. But I want to leave a mark. I don't want to just be another strength coach of the, turn the mill over. Oh, they go into insurance sales or something because they couldn't make it in strength and conditioning. I don't want that. I want to actually contribute to the field and in a positive way, hopefully, and leave my mark on the field. So I'm open to ideas too. I'm trying a bunch of new stuff. So
That's cool. Good for you.
this year I started the YouTube channel, and that now I'm doing that apparently. So
Awesome.
that's a so I don't know if that answered your question, but
It
I mean,
100% answered. I think, just keep putting it out there, share the results that you
right.
found. Um, I don't know if there's conferences, but you could think about a conference, you could think about a journal article. to do a little bit more of an academic twist, but you're
Sure.
more nuances that you're using YouTube and I think that's great. The podcasts, those are awesome options too.
Well, thank you. I am applying for, I've applied for a few professor positions at universities here and crickets, but I'm applying. I'm trying. So,
Awesome. Good for you.
Yeah,
but yeah, I
hang
mean,
in
I
there.
just, oh, no, please
I
go
was
ahead.
just gonna say, no, I was just gonna say, hang in there on those searches. There aren't as many out there, but they're looking for quality, motivated people, and being a curious person would make you a great faculty member in that regard because we get to do this, and all kinds of interesting ideas come across our daily offers, and it's great to be able to see people like you take it, struggle through it, which we all do. Each of us probably can give you our own verse on how we struggled through our studies, but persisted and yielded great results. So and I think you've done a nice job here considering all the challenges that you had. And it is a unique little niche piece. It's that brick in the wall that becomes another lever for the next round.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
And if you're already putting feelers out, maybe consider reaching out to some MLB teams as well. They might have some interest in this related to, the walkout songs that each player is choosing. So
That's
let's get
next.
some.
One of my undergrad professors was a Houston Astros strength coach. Um, he was let go during the whole sign stealing scandal, but he was curious about this as well, and that came up as well. So that's something we're going to be talking about with his connections, hopefully soon. But that's something that we have thought about. Yeah,
Yeah.
is the walkout songs.
It's a legal performance enhancer as opposed to
Exactly.
stealing signs, right?
And it only costs royalty money for playing music. I don't know what royalty money costs, but
Um, well, on that note, yeah, I think that thank you for the lively dialogue. I guess we'll ask Dr. Lamont, Dr. Nipper one more time if you happen to have any other questions or comments for now.
No.
Nope. Nope.
All right, Michael. Yeah. So thanks again for the professionalism in responding to our questions. At this point, you've earned a little bit of a breather. So if you don't mind making me a co-host, you can click on participants and find, oh, I already am a co-host, so never mind.
okay.
Um, yeah. On that note, I'm going to create a quick breakout session and take a break, and we'll come back to you as soon as we can with the final verdict here.
Okay.
I said
Thank you
verdict,
all.
but it's not jury duty, so don't make any assumptions about the length of
Don't
our
say that. That sounded so
conversation.
ominous now.
We could just be talking about cats for all you know. So, but we'll get back to you as soon as we can.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're back.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Well, there you are. So the conversation didn't take too long because you made an easy decision for us. So congratulations, Michael. You have passed this official milestone with the dissertation defense. So we're really just impressed with your resilience, ability to, adapt and overcome obstacles, and the passion for the topic that you have does not go unnoticed. And so, yeah, I think you're a real blessing, to the institution that you're at and, the athletes that you're working with. Um, as a lifelong assistant coach, I know what it's like to, try to make the athletes happy and try to make the head coach happy. And I think you're poised to do really well with that. And the hard work has been paying off for you. So congratulations. The next step, this is kind of the penultimate step. So next step, we're still going to take one last look at the manuscript as the final sign off for the conferral of your degree. But congratulations, you are not just a pass with minor revisions or major, but we're classifying this as a pass, which don't come along that often. So great job.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for your help and support. And I really do appreciate all the advice you guys have given me throughout the 3-4 years this has been, and the revisions, everything we've done. So, I mean, you guys helped out a ton with this success. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, kudos to you, Michael. You've done a really great job. And I was sharing when we were in breakout how I had no idea that you had such huge transitions in your life. It didn't show at all. So congratulations for being able to do all of that plus your doctorate, and have significant issues with collecting your data. So that was really cool. On a quick side note, I am putting together a sports psychology program for my daughter's gymnastics team and a high school gymnastics team. And now I'm adding music to the what the coaches should do. So thank you for the sports psychology tip today.
Oh, of course,
Look
I'm
at
already
that.
helping people with this. See,
Yeah, first application already. Just barely got the
Right.
newly minted doctorate. That's great.
I love.
And I would just add, my congratulations to you as well, as you now kind of join us in that senior level as a doctorate. And if there's things that we can do for you, with you as you move forward in your career, we want you to consider us as a part of that peer group that can work with you and be very motivated to do so. So again, congratulations. Make sure you take the time to celebrate these things because they don't come around very often. And as you just described, you put a whole lot of effort into this. And we just want to let you know that we're really proud of the work you've done.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it all.
Take care. Michael, once again, great work. And we'll be in touch with the final steps here to get that final sign off on the manuscript. So for now, enjoy
Awesome.
it. And we'll be in touch.
All right. Thank you all. Have a
Bye.
great night.
Have a great night
Bye-bye.
too.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.